to speak for a couple of minutes on this?
Well, he should have spoke earlier when it put the one person's allowed to speak on the petition. You have 3 minutes, if the council wants, then 1 minute, it's up to you guys, but you have 3 minutes, go ahead.
Well, I only need 2. As Susan Serpa from Worcester, and I think it's very interesting that a resolution follows George Warren's resolution about the Liberty Bell, because it does, I did not know that until right now, but it's very interesting that our liberties are being hidden from us. So, thank you for putting our resolution on the agenda. It's the last but not least item listed tonight. You know, I may be just a grandma, but I believe that nothing is more urgent or important in these turbulent times to reassure the people of Worcester that your primary duty is protecting our rights. Each of you already swore to uphold and defend the constitutions of the United States and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts when you took office. But that is not enough. The swearing-in ceremony is not just a tradition, not just a ritual rite. It is a sacred dedication and directive to serve the people you represent. It is time for you to dust off these centuries-old documents that constructed our nation and our state, bring the meaning of these words to present times. As former Mayor John B. Anderson said Saturday at the rededication of the Civil War Monument, you also need to rededicate yourselves to the principles for which our predecessors sacrificed their lives. Take these documents which you swear, read them, understand how they are alive and pertinent, apply their directive to today. Do this to honor our ancestors and protect future generations. As I say, I may be just a grandma, but I urge you to do this simple, uncomplicated, but essential rededication to keep the oath. Thank you.
Thank you. So, motion. We can have a roll call then. Councilor Berger.
Once again, it's a close call, but I think Council Rosen beat.
Councilor Rosen.
Mr. Chairman, are we being asked to vote that the Worcester City Council should keep its oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the Commonwealth of the United States? Is that what we're being asked to vote on?
That's what it says at the very
I think if we've all taken that oath, and I think if we vote yes on this, we're stating publicly that evidently we don't think we've been upholding that oath. And I won't take that vote because I think everyone on this council has been upholding the vote to the best of its ability, upholding and defending the Constitution of both the Commonwealth and the United States. So to take a vote that we should be doing that is an admission, an incorrect admission, that we haven't been upholding and defending the Constitution. So I would rather not take that vote. If you vote no, that's even worse. So I feel like I'm being set up here. A yes vote or a no vote is, you know, something that if they want us to keep our oath, we also have to keep our dignity and our honesty and not take a vote like this. I've already taken my oath to the best of my ability. I always have and I always will uphold that oath, but I don't have to do it again because I don't think I've done anything wrong. So my motion would be to file.
Okay, we have a motion to file. Roll call.
Council Bergman,
Yes.
Council Conlon,
Yes.
Council Gaffney,
No.
Council King,
Yes.
Council Luce,
Yes.
Council Merrill Carlson,
Yes.
Council Rivera,
No.
Council Rosen,
Yes.
Council Russell,
Yes.
Council Toomey,
Yes.
Mayor Petty. Motion 5 passes.
And that's the end of that.
Is profane, contains slurs, or hate speech. Just to ensure that it's reflected in the guiding principle of this body that there's no place for such material in the official record of the city of Worcester. Said language should be also served to protect the city of Worcester from any potential liabilities. Council King?
Yes, thank you. Just wanted to kind of give a statement on what this order is and what it isn't. This order came about, as my experience coming from January to now we are in July, just being a part of this body and understanding that, part of our role as counselors is to maintain decorum. Part of our responsibility is to be a good representation of the city within these chambers. And of recent time, what's come to my attention is that when we have language that becomes part of our official record, that is demeaning, that lacks civility and respect, that targets gender, individuals, and submitted by us, that we must be able to do better. We must be able to represent ourselves better without undermining the content, the spirit of what it is we're trying to achieve. This order isn't about anything other than just that. I think that, we want to do what we can to respect law, respect order, but we also need to be able to be respectful to the folks that come here on a regular basis to testify to each one another as counselors. And I think this is a step in that direction. And what this is a request to the manager, to request the city solicitor to come up with a draft with regards to the rules. Currently, Rule 2 requires that every counselor shall maintain decorum, and that's something we absolutely ought to be striving for. I think that what I'm looking for is something that gives us a guideline, a baseline. What I like from the solicitor is a definition of simply decorum. What is it? How can we be guided by that principle as we conduct ourselves here at City Hall? And what can we do moving forward to ensure that we are engaging in transparent, respectful dialogue as we go about our business here in the city? Before I yield, I'd like to ask the city solicitor just a question in regards to the order before I yield. And that question is, then we talk about the language that I'm looking for should serve to protect the city from any potential liabilities. And, in the order we talk about profanity, slurs, hate speech. And my question to the chair is there a legal definition of hate speech as it relates to the First Amendment, freedom of speech?
Mr. Sosa?
Mr. Chair, I think there's a general legal principle that says, first of all, hate speech is defined as speech that is disparaging or expressing offensive or unwanted views about a certain group or type of individual. And I think the Supreme Court has decided that just on pure hate speech, the Constitution, the First Amendment would protect that. Yes, any restriction on that speech would be a content-based restriction, which the First Amendment does not allow.
And Mr. Solicitor, as we attempt to have such a draft for the rules, can you share a little bit about the ability of us to do that as a guiding principle?
Through the chair, recognizing the First Amendment issue gives everyone the right to freedom of speech. There are still limitations that the law imposes on the freedom of speech. I would suggest defamation or obscenity or pornography or even sexual harassment in the workplace. All of those involve an element of speech which is prohibited and not a violation of the First Amendment. It's prohibited for political candidates to campaign within 150 feet of the polling place on election day. That's an impairment of the freedom of speech, which is not upheld by the Supreme Court. So I think there's the council rules use the time-honored word of decorum, which is like probable cause. It's a general phrase that gets defined every day and redefined. I think there's an element of decorum that's involved in your order. And the other issue I'm concerned about is maintaining on city records a material that may lead to a hostile work environment claimed by a city employee. And the employment laws not only prohibit that, but they also place a duty on the employer, which would be the city, to take actions to prevent a hostile work environment. So those are all issues that factor into the items you've raised under your order.
Thank you. You know, and just in closing, thank you, Mr. Solicitor. Just in closing, this really is about us as a representative body, us as a reflection of the city. You know, I thought about some of the language that I read recently, and you know, what I think about is we have teenagers, we have folks in junior high, we have college students who come here and they participate, they volunteer, they're interning or what have you, and they take this material back. They take it back to places of higher learning, institutions of higher learning. They take it back to their schools. And I certainly think that we want to do the best that we can as a council to set a tone, to set an example. And I think we can do that. And I think if we have some specific guidelines in our rules to help us remember that we can perhaps avoid some of the missteps that have occurred this year. And that's the purpose of this order. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Carlson, followed by Council Gaffney.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. At our last meeting, one of our colleagues, Councilor Gaffney, filed his review of the city manager. This now is a public document. It's now on the city website, along with the rest of our reviews. Post-meeting, I became aware that Councilor Gaffney's review contained language that I found offensive, and most of you in this room know I don't offend easily. His review contained a word that as a woman and as a member of this legislative body and as a member of this community, I found to be crude and offensive. And the big elephant in this room is we all know what that word was, and he used the C word. I found it that this word is coarse and would be offensive in private discourse. That the gentleman chose to use the word in the context of public review, the city manager, is outrageous. The context in where the word originates matters little in this instance. The word in print speaks for itself. So I'd like to ask the city solicitor through the chair a question. Does the council have the authority to express our collective displeasure at the actions of an individual councilor if such actions by an individual councilor are so offensive that it brings discredit to the council as a body? If so, could you outline the process for such a collective action? I think that we just, as my colleague King said, in December 28, 2015, there were new rules that were adopted for this city council. And in this, one of them is maintain decorum at all times. And now, I might add, do I need to explain what that word means? I mean, it's common courtesy, it's decency, it's a level of respect. We just, maybe a month ago, in this council, we asked that decorum be used at our other meetings, and I would ask that this is something that seriously, again, I find it extremely offensive as a woman that this word needed to be in a review of our city manager. I think it's extremely poor judgment.
Councilor Gaffney? You want an answer for the question? I'm sorry. Oh, Mrs. Solicitor?
Or is it something that you need to come back with through the chair? Is it something that needs to come back in form of a...
Through the chair, I'd like not to speculate, and I'd like to research the issues and be on front ground and get to a report.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Councilor Gaffney?
This is the First Amendment of our Constitution. And earlier tonight, I heard from this council, we don't need to reaffirm our oath to maintain the Constitution at all. We do that every day. So, let me read it to you. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibition of free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government or for redress of grievances. I also want to point out that RAB versus the city of St. Paul, 1992, deemed it unconstitutional to ban hate speech. And that's what this item actually talks about, is any speech that, contains profanity, slurs, hate speech, which I guess we'll define later on. That's what we're basically saying here. We're going to take the First Amendment here on the Worcester City Council, we're just going to throw it in the trash, because whatever we don't like is deemed hate speech. In fact, in the last 6 months, we came up with some new rules on this council, Rule 21, Rule 35, limiting the debate on city council. And we just sent an item to the Rules Committee, chaired by the same council who brought this item forward, to limit public participation in our meetings. I mean, let's go through the First Amendment again. I mean, where else is the public going to be able to readdress their grievances, if not there? Now, we're going to limit items perceived as hate speech, which is deemed by, one person's hate speech is another person's party platform in this world. It's unconstitutional. This item is unconstitutional from the get-go. But we've already talked about it, or apparently, I guess from what I've heard from the council that brought it forward, is he was sort of amending it as he was going along. There's nothing formal, but this is what's before the council right now, is to violate the First Amendment. In reflecting on my experience with this council, I have to address hypocrisy here. When the Worcester Police Department was here and they were viciously maligned by the BLM group, no item was brought forward then. Nobody protected them at all. Twice, I heard from them. They came in. I had a reverend come and accuse me of being, not only am I being accused of being everything on earth, to include racist, anti-Semitic. I've had someone say that I hate children. It's ridiculous. But no item came forward at that point. Now here we are. There's some articles that were included, which I'll get to in a minute, in the city manager review. Nothing I wrote, but the articles were included. We don't like what came out on my review of the city manager's evaluation, and now that's hate speech, is what it is. Not only that, we also recently discussed the fact that some well-known members of the public came and had some discourse at a subcommittee meeting. And what we did, we're going to have public protection now at the subcommittee. We're going to have the police at the subcommittee meetings. And the person I requested was the same person that didn't support them when the BLM group was in here calling them racist. When they did a song about the racist Worcester police. And that's the person that asked for protection at the subcommittee meetings. So now we all swore an oath to uphold the Constitution. We know that. And that happens whether it's convenient to you or not. You cannot ban free speech. Petition the government, we're trying to limit that. I've already discussed it. We refused to vote on a couple items otherwise tonight because we deem them not within the purview of the city council. I would suggest that an unconstitutional act would be not within the purview of the council. And now we're going to decide. Who's going to decide what language we can and can't use? There's the question. Who here? Was it going to be a subcommittee that says what language can be used, what language can be... Should every item be reviewed by that subcommittee? And we don't exactly have an impeccable track record, do we, with regard to defendants' First Amendment rights, do we? I mean, I think there's a, what is it, a $1.2 million attorney's fees for the other item that we tried to ban the panhandlers. So that's great. We talked about worried about lawsuits and inviting lawsuits. We want to do something that is already, the Supreme Court has already ruled, it's unconstitutional. Again, RAB versus City of St. Paul, 1992. But let's go ahead and move forward on that. Let's say we're going to ban hate speech because, hey, you know, we feel like doing it. So that'll be another even $1.2 million we can just dole out right away. You know, and on that, the fact of the matter is, this really kind of boils down to freedom of the press. You know, I use multiple sources in my review. Now, if I hadn't used multiple sources, if I had just wrote 20 pages of what I wrote, the rest were just the articles that were attached to it. And by the way, the official record, it's all redacted, but that is what it is. But the fact of the matter is, we didn't like who wrote the articles. That's what this comes down to. I used Worcester magazine extensively, and the irony of that is that I actually read an article where they said that I included a picture just randomly. I think it was a Wisteria. That picture was actually in the Worcester magazine article, so apparently they don't even read their own paper. But the fact of the matter is, this is really about the fact that there's some articles and they're from Turtle Sports. That's the truth of it. They're a media network. It's grown from nowhere to, I think they got about 36,000 followers on Facebook. And you know what? They say something that's uncomfortable. And yes, they include very colorful language. It is what it is. But the swearing, there was swearing in there, which I didn't write. I just included the full articles. I'll get to that in a moment. But Michael, there's swear words in that article. You know, and I think, you know, this is my best Rick Russian impression. Here we are watching the football game. It's the Super Bowl. It's the Patriots. It's Tom Brady playing against the New York Giants. He throws the ball downfield. Wes Welker should be an easy first down. Move the ball. Wes drops it. I'm sure everybody at home was watching that day and said, oh, golly, gosh darn. No, they didn't. You know, give it up. I'll apologize for this much. You know, when I was younger, I worked in a factory. Was around that kind of language all the time. I go out in the real world now. You know, where I go, people use colorful language. You know, I don't go to the same parties where people drink martinis, put their feet up. That's not what happens, and that's not the real world either. You know? Now, if I hadn't included my evaluations, the documentation to back it up, I would have heard Gaffney made it all up. You know, but no, I went to whether it was the Worcester Magazine, the Worcester Telegram Gazette, it was the Herald, I quoted Julian Levy. I mean, the sources were all over the place. And if I hadn't put them into the evaluation, it would have been, oh no, this is all just coming out of him. But I used their language to prove my case. Simple as that. Now, if I had changed the content, then I would have heard that I colored the content concerning the articles. Would have heard probably the same sort of nonsense as well. So I simply left the article in there for the reader to judge. And there's the thing. So if you say, well, I don't like this, and I think this article is crap. Well, if you don't like the fact of the language in it, maybe you'll make that assumption, and that's fine. Does it help? Does it hurt? It doesn't matter to me. That's the way the article is. That's the way I left it. I didn't take myself to redact other people's work. It speaks for itself. In some cases, maybe it helped, maybe it didn't. But at least I didn't color it. It is what it is. The document spoke for itself. And the fact of the matter is, yes, Turtle Boy uses profanity to convey its message. Of course, for some reason, 36,000 people follow the local blog just on Facebook alone. So apparently not everybody in the city of Worcester is easily as offended as some people here on city council. But again, this really isn't about, banning free speech or any of those other things. We're just upset because my evaluation of the city manager didn't get us to roll into this month trying to extend his contract. That's the fact. Simple as that. What really gets me about that, though, is that right from the very get-go on my evaluation, I point out the fact that we were told things. We were told things at the senior center. We were told things over at the Jewish Community Center, that things were being done here in the city of Worcester concerning crime, that we were taking all these actions. And I put right in there another item, which I guess seems to be okay, concerning and of course, it was on the mayor's website they were taking these actions to, and I put an article in from the chief of police, then Gary Jim, and again, we didn't do any of that. But we get all these excellent reviews, not even paying any attention to the fact that less than a total accounting of what was going on was being portrayed.
Over 10 minutes, so.
I will wrap up momentarily. Just leave it with this. The efforts to stifle debate and public input the last 6 months have been disappointing and cannot continue. Freedom of speech defines our democracy. It cannot be limited because you don't like its tone or its tenor. We continue to walk down this path of trampling on the Constitution and to limit any debate about actions of this council. If you can't handle the pressure of public discourse, and I say this because I've handled it multiple times, then you simply don't belong in this public office. As the city manager says, to be crystal clear, the same councils moving this item, talking about the tone of public debate, the same ones that enlisted the aid of those that have come to council and said the most vile things they could about me, our police and our public servants. My motion is to file this item. Thank you.
Council.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to question the intentions of my colleague, Councilor King, but this is probably the single most dangerous item I've seen filed on this council floor. If we don't understand the Constitution, and if we haven't read it lately, we should have learned from the Panhandler's case that freedom of speech in this country is sacred. And what it appears as if there is an adversarial relationship here with one single counselor that's being cloaked in this discussion of civility, transparency, respect, decorum, all irrelevant. Freedom of speech trumps everything.
Yes.
And we've had discussions here about the Constitution and whether it applies on a local basis versus a federal basis with legislation, namely the Patriot Act, that eliminates a lot of our constitutional rights. And as politicians, and as somebody who served on this council since 1990, if you think this is adversarial on this floor, you haven't seen anything. I've seen real adversarial and combative behavior on the council floor that hasn't come close to anything I've seen in the last 10 years. And basically, it comes down to the very basic fact that once elected to office or serving in a high public position, you are public property, and you're going to be a target. For God's sakes, I've been stalked by a political stalker for the last decade. Was I going to leave because my feelings were hurt? Please, we have more important things to do on this council. The most important thing we have to do on this council is understand what the Constitution is. This country is identified by its Constitution. And its Constitution, by the way, is being ignored from the White House, a president who doesn't understand what executive orders are, to a Supreme Court justice who started interfering in the national election.
That's right.
That's how little regard the Constitution has gotten from the top, now all the way down to the Worcester City Council. This kind of request, no matter what the city solicitor comes through, will not withstand any kind of legal scrutiny. We will be back in court, and I'll go to the ACLU myself to make sure we're back in court. We cannot tolerate, and we should not be offended by somebody's so-called bad behavior. That's part of life. You know what the most important weapon we have? The mayor's gavel. He didn't use it for 4 hours when the Ferguson group came in here and shouted the worst kind of language I've ever heard, accusing the police of crimes, of behavior that was illegal, hostile, negative, and by our own existence, our behavior. You know, when I hear about institutional racism and those kinds of issues, it's a blame issue. We are all to blame. And if we allow this kind of item, we are perpetuating blame and creating an environment that is not American, frankly. I mean, my parents were immigrants. We've heard that story. Councilor Bergman can give you the same story from oppressive countries that didn't allow freedom of speech and freedom of the press. I take it very seriously. This item should be filed. It should go nowhere. I'm ashamed that it's here. And I don't want to start an adversarial relationship with another counselor, but very clearly, I have to use the strongest words possible to show my absolute fear of this kind of item. Without freedom of the press and freedom of speech, we are no better than a third-rate country that has no reason to exist. So my motion is to file this, Mr. Chairman.